Today, we begin a new series entitled Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets. I want you to have a tool, some handles to help your family, friends, and yourself. The big idea for this series is the often overlooked relationship between good questions and good decisions. Good questions set us up for good decisions. In some ways, our decisions are no better than our questions we ask or we don't think to ask. In this series, I'm going to give you 5 questions to ask every time you make decisions, and the magnitude and the significance of financials, relational, academic, or professional decisions. These questions will shape your life, marriage, parenting relationships, and the skill set that we need to forge ahead. It's the framework for how to make decisions. It's how you teach your kids to make decisions as well. I'm convinced that if you'll ask, answer honestly, and act. Let me say that one more time because this is key. If you'll ask the question, answer it honestly, and then act upon it, your answers to these 5 questions, you will make better decisions. You'll help your life and end up in the direction that significantly increases the odds that you'll end up where you want to be. As importantly, the people who look to you and depend on you. Because you are not only the person that is impacted by your decisions, and you're not the only person impacted by your regrets either. In fact, we have no idea who is ultimately impacted by the decisions that we make. The impact or outcome of my decisions may shape other stories in my life. Your decisions determine your fingerprints of the future and possibly on somebody else's life. And it takes a lifetime for the outcome of the decisions to play out. Think about this. What if Martin Luther King Jr. had decided to stay up north and remain silent about what he knew was taking place in the South? The aftermath of his decision continues to play out to this day and impacts all of us. Generations of people may very well be impacted by your decisions. Think about how different your life would be if your parents or grandparents had decided differently about a few key things. Your grandparents or parents made what seemed to them to be small, insignificant decisions, but those decisions determined the trajectory of your life. They weren't thinking about you at the time. You weren't around to be thought about, but you've been impacted by their decisions for better, or maybe in some cases for worse. Maybe your dad is the one who conquered the habit and kept the family together. Maybe your mom chose to stay when another lady would have walked out. You see, at this point, you never really know what or who hangs in the balance of the decisions that we make. But we do know this: private decisions have public outcomes. Your private decisions probably won't stay private. Your personal decisions will impact some other people. We all want to get this right. Yes, we do. And let me go back to this again. And if you will ask, answer honestly, and act. So this is a big deal to me. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than me. The most significant thing you may do is not something that you do, but something that you raise. You see, your decisions determine the direction and quality of your life, your family. Your decisions are like the steering wheel of your life. Our lives and our experiences follow our decisions. You know what? You are where you are because of the decisions that you've made. We decide how to respond. We choose our responses. Remember, that is how you avoid the victim mentality. It's seemingly small nuance that explains how people who've dealt with the worst things imaginable, one that they could have not overcome or be able to rise above the situation and accomplish extraordinary things. It's why people who have every reason in the world to be bitter, angry, cynical, and self-destruct avoid all of that. How do they do that? They decide rather than react their way into the future. In doing so, they create a preferred future. A response creates a better path forward than a reaction. A reaction generally makes a bad situation worse. You ever seen that? But a thoughtful response creates a bridge or a way forward. Reactions usually create regret. Your ability to respond rather than to react is what I'm going to call your superpower. Did you know you had superpowers? Oh, yes, you do. You see, it works this way. Deciding to react sets us up to become a reflection of what we despise and of the people we despise. To react is to relinquish control of our story. It's like handing the pen to an enemy and asking them to write the next chapter of our story. But deciding to respond's key, allows us to thwart evil and redeem pain. In some cases, it empowers us to reverse the course of our lives. Never underestimate the power of a measured response. Your responses and decisions, that's how you write and how you decide your best story. We are where we are primarily because of the decisions that we've made. And we've headed in the direction we're headed for some time. Which means, of course, that your future will be determined by the decisions as well. Your decisions determine the story of your life. But I got good news. What's that? The good news is, if you don't like your current story, if you don't like your current chapter of story, or if you don't like the current direction that your story is going, you have the opportunity to decide your life in a different direction. You can decide a better story. You can decide a better way towards a preferred future. You have the opportunity to decide a good story. You see, good questions lead to better decisions. A better decision leads to fewer regrets. This is why on the backside of a bad decision, it's not unusual to hear someone say, "I should have asked more questions. I should have thought this through." We know intuitively that the more questions we ask, the more information we acquire, which leads to greater insight and hopefully, to better decisions. But pausing to ponder the list of potential disruptive questions isn't an easy task, or it's not even intuitive. You see, the truth is, most of us resist uninvited questions when we're making a decision. In the moment, we feel like we're being questioned rather than simply being asked a question. There's a big difference. And when we confuse one for the other, our defenses go up and our learning aptitude goes down. It's a bad situation. It becomes a bad environment because it's virtually impossible to welcome new information or insight when we're convinced our judgment is being questioned. This is especially true when we're making personal decisions. After all, they're personal, aren't they? Which translates, and it means it's nobody's business. This is about me. But most of our personal decisions eventually affect some other person. It may be none of their business, but the result of our personal decision often intersects with someone else's business, beginning with the folks closest to us, our family, our kids. Well-placed, appropriately timed, thought-provoking questions set us up for better decisions and fewer regrets. You see, that's our series, Better Decisions and Fewer Regrets. What if you knew the questions ahead of time? What if you had a list of questions in your head you could ask yourself when faced with an important decision? What if you had a list of questions to ask when you're stuck? Questions to ask when you're unsure, or maybe you're even frustrated. Imagine having a list of questions that serve as a grid or a filter to evaluate your options and even your emotions. You see, the purpose of this series is to give you the questions ahead of time. Not all the questions, but 5 questions that I'm convinced will result in better decisions and fewer regrets. If you ask, answer honestly, and act. Let me say that again because that's key in this lesson. If you ask, answer yourself honestly, and then act upon your answer. As we move forward into the series, I want to add 5 questions to your decision-making grid. I say add because you already have some sort of grid. You run through your thoughts and the options. You use it every day. You just aren't aware of it. Every time you make a decision, you unconsciously ask yourself these questions. Will I enjoy this? Will this hurt me? Will this hurt someone else? Will anyone find out? What's my out if someone finds out? Great questions. But some questions we ask ourselves are helpful, others not so much. The point is, we already have a decision-making grid or template in our life. In the series here, I want to add 5 additional points, options, references. So in parts 2 through 6, we'll unpack each of the 5 questions beginning next week with what I'm going to say the integrity question. Between now and next time, I want you to commit to saying a phrase from the book of Proverbs to memory. It plays a big part of all that we do in this series, and it's simply this, Proverbs 27:12. The Bible says, "The prudent see danger and take refuge." The prudent see danger and take refuge. That's the whole premise that this series is about. Prudent people live as if life is connected. That today's decisions determine tomorrow's options and outcomes. That today's decisions show up in tomorrow's relationships. We're prudent. We're Spirit-led. We're Spirit-filled. That today's reactions and responses have a way of smuggling themselves into the future. You see, when the prudent see or sense danger, something ahead that has the potential to rob us of our preferred future, rob us of maybe your hopes and your dreams, your future potential, we respond appropriately. You see, the prudent, that's you, that's me, that's us, that's God's people. The prudent don't decide based on what's immediately in front of them. They decide based on where they eventually want to be relationally, financially, academically, professionally, mentally, physically, and very important, spiritually. So again, Proverbs 27:12 says, "The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty." Lord, let me be prudent. Lord, let us lean into Proverbs. Lord, help me as a pastor to teach us to be prudent. Another translation says this way, "and suffer for it again." That's the simple. That's maybe, is the word unprudent okay? So let's be prudent. Let's make better decisions. After all, our decisions determine the direction and quality of our lives. We'll pick up the discussion there next time in part 2 of Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets. Hey, come on, don't miss it.